Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority Board of Commissioners virtual work session. Today is Wednesday, January 20th, 2021, 5 p.m. All right. Could we get a I'm calling the meeting to order. I meant the roll call of commissioners. But first, let me read the code that allows us to be meeting online in this way during the pandemic. This is Governor Northam's Executive Order number 53, restricting public gatherings of greater than 10 persons. Accordingly, Code 2.2-3708.2A3 permits public bodies to meet electronically to discuss business required or necessary to operation of the public body in discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities in times of emergencies and to address COVID-19. Therefore, this meeting is being held electronically pursuant to Virginia law because the COVID-19 pandemic makes it impractical and unsafe to assemble a quorum physically in a single location. Okay, now we can do the roll call of commissioners.
So there is a phone number on the attendee side. Does anyone have the last four of Commissioner Slaughter's phone number?
Yep, that looks like her. Let's see. Do I need to do it or?
No, Brian is here. I think only he can do it.
Okay.
John, did you want me to bring that person up?
Yes, please.
I read your lips. I think you said yes, please. You know what? It's we can allow them to talk. I can't promote them as a panelist. Could the person on the telephone ending in 9957 just say a few words? Let us know who you are.
This is Commissioner Slaughter.
Hi, Commissioner Slaughter.
Hi.
Thank you for trying to get in the meeting. I know you're
Yes,
you're
I'm
busy.
just running rags here.
Yeah. Okay, so hopefully you can listen while you can.
Yeah.
All right, so now we can do roll call of commissioners.
Commissioner Goldblatt,
I'm here.
Commissioner Dr. Henry,
Here.
Commissioner Lisa Green,
Here.
Commissioner Slaughter,
Here.
Commissioner Mayor Walker, Chair Rucker,
Here.
and Osteen, of course, is no longer with us. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, let's have a moment of silence before we begin. Yes? Oh, anyway, we'll just have a quick moment of silence before we begin. All right, thank you, everyone. This was an exciting day for some people. And I think in our general announcements, we only have, right now, we have a monthly board meeting on Monday. But I know that there are other committee meetings going on, if anyone wants to voice any that you know about.
Yeah, the safety committee meeting, I'm not going to have that. I think it's the 9th of February is the next meeting. No, perhaps I think it's February 2nd is the next one. It would be 2 weeks from yesterday.
Okay. Great, thank you. And the redevelopment meetings are being reconfigured. So we'll make a new list of what's going on with the redevelopment meetings and who should attend which of the meetings now that construction hopefully will be starting soon. So today we have a presentation on our budget or budget training, but thinking ahead to this year. Ms. Fetro is here, and she'll be talking to us about budgeting and what we have to work with this year.
Great.
Thank you. Are you here? You're still in Charlottesville.
I'm here. I'm at the community room at South First.
So we have a special in-town appearance.
Yes, I was very excited to come. It was my first, it's funny, my last trip before COVID was for this training. And
Oh,
so
wow.
this, when I went to the airport this week, I'm like, I literally had pulled out stuff. I'm like, this is from the last time I flew to Charlottesville to do this training before. So I appreciate the opportunity to come back. We had a really positive experience last year in initiating the budget process with this review with the board. So I appreciate the opportunity to come out again. We have obviously some new board members and we have new staff. And I also think that it's just important to continue this type of review because the more we speak about things, the more we talk about them, the easier it is to digest it when it's all coming at us at one time. So the process that we put together that was similar to last year is that we will review the parameters of the budget, how the budget's put together. We do have some specific information that we can review today that we've been starting to chew on with the staff. And then my understanding from John, Mr. Sales, what will happen from there, really you will start to have a draft prepared in February. You'll have your community meetings with your residents and stakeholders. Mr. Sales will present a draft to the board at the February board meeting for continued consumption and comment and edit. And that process will continue until hopefully the March board meeting when a final draft that the community stakeholders and the board are prepared to approve. And so what we start today is the kickoff again of a budget review. The goal of today is to provide you with an overview of the budgeting process. Like I said, we'll go over kind of the setup of the budget, what those account lines are, what we're looking for, the type of information we try to gather. And this year, interestingly, we have some new revenue lines that we're getting additional levels of funding that we can talk a little bit about, what funds we anticipate being available for 2022 and what things we may end up, using before the end of March. And so I'm going to share my screen.
Ms. Fetro, I realize we have two commissioners who were not here last March.
Yes.
Ms. Green and Dr. Henry. So maybe you could say a word about how you fit into the puzzle.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So so let me introduce myself quickly. I apologize. So my name's Haley Fetro, and I and my partner have a consulting firm, HSF Consulting. Personally, I am an executive director of a small housing authority in Massachusetts. We have 210 public housing units. I'm also the chair of the local board in my town. And so along with both of those activities, I have been a consultant in public housing since 2006. And my partner has been a consultant in public housing as well as an auditor for longer than that, since 1999. And so we've been going out, I think 97, sorry, he just looked at me and told me I was wrong. So we've been had the opportunity to work with multiple housing authorities throughout the country. Primarily we focus on the East Coast, but we have had clients in Texas, which has been exciting and new for us to undertake. But primarily we usually begin our engagements providing technical assistance to housing authorities that are struggling in areas of finance. We usually come in, help them reorganize, restructure, and really put best practices in place. And the goal for us is to provide a sustainable model for housing authorities going forward that really they don't need us as much. Usually in the beginning, we're kind of brought in and we're really hands-on. And then as you gain in capacity and in knowledge, we have the ability to really peel off. And so my partner, Bob, he has a lot of clients that at this point in our career with them, that he's providing just year-end financial assistance and some ongoing technical assistance on a monthly basis. We have other clients, where I serve as, the chief financial officer on a monthly basis. And then we have some that are a little bit in the middle. And I think at Charlottesville, we've had a varying opportunity to kind of help out in the finance department. And it's been exciting to have new staff come on in the last year with Mr. Sales to really start to dig in on those areas that we've consistently kind of felt need a level of attention and assistance. And so I think a lot of the items that we're looking at today and we'll talk about with respect to Section 8 and the changes with public housing are really showing that level of attention and care to those programs, which we're excited to see. And the hope with the new hiring and the new staff is that, you know, you'll call us when you need us, you know, and that it won't be, maybe the relationship will transition. You know, obviously we've been here more consistently before, and we were providing assistance with redevelopment as well, and some knowledge base there. And we'll hopefully see within, you know, the next year where that relationship goes, but we're excited for Charlottesville and, you know, all the improvements and changes that you guys have been making. So I've shared my screen. So what I try to provide first off is this is just the basic line item budget. So when we sit down with staff and when you start to get the budget package in February, this is the universe of line items that you'll be looking at. There's various categories and we're going to go through them. And what we want to do today is talk a little bit about some of the revenues and how we derive that information. So you have a knowledge base so that when you're seeing some of these more specific numbers coming at you, you see where we're getting them from. This budget that you have reviewed previously and will review again is a column budget. And so basically Charlottesville operates with multiple funds. And so you have public housing, that is a standalone fund. You have your Section 8 program, which is a standalone fund. You have your central office cost center, which is your high level administrative staff. And then interestingly, this year, Mr. Sales and I have talked about creating a column budget for your redevelopment activities and some of your city funded activities like your Charlottesville SRAP program. And so we're gonna take a look at doing that this year as well. Those aren't budgets that are traditionally required by HUD to be approved, but they've taken on such a significant role in the overall operations of the CRHA that Mr. Sales feels like it's important to finally put those things in writing and put them down. And so we're focusing on that as well. Is there any questions before I keep going? No? Okay. So I will do my best to stop every once in a while and make sure that I take a breath and give everyone the opportunity to jump in and ask any questions. So first and foremost, when we meet with the staff, I try to gather some information generally so they can have a sense of what type of revenues we have. So one of the first things we do, the top of this budget, obviously looking at our revenues, is starting with tenant rental revenue. The most important numbers that we need when we're looking at these budgets is to understand what occupied units we have in our public housing properties, where we are today and where we anticipate being at the beginning of the fiscal year. So the staff met yesterday. I met with Brano and with Melinda Height, and we reviewed current occupied units. And so what we do, and you see the schedule before you, this is a schedule of the entire fiscal year to date. It's got through January, and it has every single property, and it lists out by month how many occupied units are at those properties. And so you'll see here is the January column, and we will continue to populate this because what this does is it allows us to determine your average rent. So when we're trying to estimate next year and we're trying to estimate what your tenant rental revenue will be, we really want to get to that average rent. And so we like to look at an entire year. COVID will make things a little bit different because drastically all public housing authorities tenant portion of rent went down significantly because incomes changed. But respectfully, in the next year, we anticipate that some of those incomes will stay where they are. We're hoping obviously that individuals have the opportunity to get back in the workforce, but we will remain conservative because with public housing, remember that any dollar that you don't receive in rent will be offset in operating subsidy. And so those funds will be received when HUD does a review of your rents that were received. So what we try to do, like I said, in front of you is the schedule, and we go, you know, property by property, and we figure out for each property how many units you currently have occupied. So what we do is we take that full review, and then we look at what your current revenues are. So this is a review of all of your rents for the fiscal year through January, because the January rents were posted. We figure out what your total leased months were, and that gives us an average rent. And so as you can see in front of you, each property has their own average rent. We take that because we want to have some real data, some real information, because as much as everything is your best estimation based on what your plans are, we'd like to root it in real data. So then we take that average rent and we plug it into an estimated lease up schedule. Obviously, we looked through this with Brano and with Melinda and with Mr. Sales. I have some notes here that where we anticipate being by the time we get to April 1st, we anticipate having 4 vacancies at West Haven. We anticipate 2 at South First. We anticipate 2 at Mickey and 2 at Riverside. So what that allows us to do is come up with an estimated lease up rate. We have our projected number of leased units. We take the average rent that we've just come up with, and then that will give us a budgeted rent and then an annualized rent. So we'll keep this ball moving until we get to March. So what'll happen is I'll take your numbers from February, we'll populate them. We'll take the numbers from March and populate them to make sure there's no significant changes. But the nice thing about these type of forms is that we can continue to input the real data in them and get better and better numbers until we're as close as we can be when we get to March to submit that final draft to the board for its consideration. As I mentioned before, any dollar you don't receive with respect to rent, you will receive an operating subsidy. Right now, HUD has not released the tools. So every year they release an operating subsidy submission that has to be completed. They have not released that yet this year. They're anticipating those tools will be released on February 9th. They would be due back a month later, which is good for Charlottesville because you're a 331. So the hope is that we'll have some real information as to what we anticipate your operating subsidy needs to be. I put on the sheet where they have you right now. They have only obligated January and February of 2021. And so I did just an annualization of those amounts. And HUD is also right now giving about 95%, 95.23 proration. So this, 1.6 million is really only 95% of what you need because of, congressional budgets. But we'll keep an eye on that and we'll complete the tool. And hopefully these numbers will be updated to give you a clear picture for April where we anticipate that you'll be. So those 2 items are how we create your tenant rental revenue and how we anticipate what your operating subsidy will be. With respect to housing assistance payments, those revenues, Yardi is your software system and it's a great system. And so what you see before you is a voucher trend analysis report that we began utilizing recently when HUD released the emergency use circumstances funds that Charlottesville was able to capture. They requested $197,490, which was amazing. And so basically what you were able to do was determine through this trend analysis from Yardi, where you were and what your average HAP was pre-COVID, and then every month after COVID. And so we were able to utilize that in order for you to secure these funds and then use them to help offset the increased HAP that you've been experiencing because of COVID and because incomes have gone down and your housing assistance payments have gone up. And so this type of real information will be critical to us creating your budget for next year. Mr. Sales and Melinda, even today, we're looking at, it's called the 2-year tool, which is provided by HUD. They do a look back at your last 2 years and where your current HAP is. And so we'll continue to use this data to create what we anticipate your costs will be for your housing assistance payments to residents in the next year. A comparison to last year is drastic. It's exciting. The lease up effort that has been undertaken has been, the only word for it is traumatic, because they really have gone out and done a considerable amount of work. You can see here, I left on here the March 30, 2020 numbers. So you had 322 leased vouchers in March of 2020. And historically, those numbers were pretty stale. It was pretty stagnant. It was, as much as we had hope and ideas about where those numbers would go, they were really kind of staying put. And then you can see in about August, we have a month over month review here. And in about August, we started to go, You went from, 322, it was a little bit every single month, and then you started really jumping. And so at this point, as of January 2021, you have 385 units leased, which is amazing. And so we have been working with Melinda. Like I said, she's reviewing the tool today. And we'll be coming up with where we think your stabilization point will be, because we do need to make sure that you're leaving units available to be used at Crescent Halls. And then we're looking at a construction schedule that will tell us at what months we think those vouchers will be placed in service with those units. And so we'll do our best to mirror that schedule to give it as realistic of a picture as possible on a month-by-month basis. Earlier this year, hi.
Just a question. So the total vouchers here, are they all vouchers?
This is all vouchers.
So when Crescent Halls receives those vouchers, they will become in the category of project-based vouchers,
Right.
not in the general pool, right?
Right, but it will still be part of your total, because again, you can't use more than 20% of your total project-based. And so we try to keep a running look at the entire amount. That way we're clear on making sure that we don't exceed what we're allowed to.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. So like I said, we're going to work to create the schedule over the next couple months. And the nice thing is it allows us the opportunity to review. And so last year in the middle of the year, and I talked to John about it today, I'm going to do it again. We were able to look back at what we had presented to the board about where we thought we'd be every month, where we were or weren't, and what dollars we were losing. Because the biggest impact that the Section 8 program has on these leased units is with respect to your administrative fees. The administrative fees right now are significant in the Section 8 program. And so every unit that's not leased, you're not earning. And then the central office cost center can't earn a management fee off that either. And so these things, the leasing of public housing units and the leasing of your vouchers are really significant in the impacts it has on these other column budgets on the central office cost center as well. So this is the type of information that we will continue to review and continue to update, and we'll provide to the board for both the draft and for the final budget. Capital grants. So we have a review of our capital grants. I went we reviewed this as of yesterday. This is real-time information. So Charlottesville currently has 3 capital fund grants that are available for use. We have listed an anticipated column. HUD has not released any guidance yet with respect to capital fund year 21. So what we did was our best guess was to utilize, 2020 numbers. Based on the amount of funds that have become available from HUD for operations, I don't necessarily anticipate a huge increase on the capital fund side, but I wanted to be conservative, so that's why we used our 2020 numbers. What that does is it allows us to go through and continue to program and identify what uses are soft costs, which can be used to offset operations, and what uses will be for hard costs, which will be programmed by John and, with the board's consultation on what major projects will happen at these properties over the next year. I know there's always a lot of dialogue about the parallel track and being mindful of the other AMPs as Crescent Halls and then South First participate in the redevelopment effort. And so we like to be mindful of what funds are available. So we create this sheet. And so what you can see is for capital year 18, you still have $68,314,000 available. You've got $565,274 available for 19. You've got the vast majority of 20 available with roughly 581,000. And then, like I said, we anticipate the same level grant for 2021. So all told, you have roughly $2.1 million in capital fund grants that are available to you. Of that total, 614,655 roughly are for soft costs. And so what that means really is those are funds that are used for operations. Charlottesville has the opportunity every year, right here, this 1406 line. That allows you to program 25% of your grant award to use for public housing operations. So traditionally what that really has done is propped up Crescent Halls. Those funds have been transferred to help offset Crescent Halls. But again, the hope with redevelopment is that those funds will be available to assist the operations of West Haven or any of, the other scattered sites. The management improvements, that's always 10% of the grant, and it's listed there under 21. And I know that John and the staff are beginning the process of the capital fund planning, and they're beginning that effort. And so they will review with, community members, residents, stakeholders, and the board, what they anticipate using those management improvements for. Traditionally, it's for those items that have been identified as deficiencies in the audit. And so you use those funds to help correct those items. 1410 administration, again, that's 10% of your grant. That is a management fee. It's revenue that the central office cost center utilizes to offset the work of John and of the staff to do and manage these capital fund grants. And then finally, the remaining dollars are all put together into a single category, 1480. Traditionally before, HUD used to have everything split out into all these different line items. And then when you would need to make a revision, it would be a major process. And so what HUD has done in the last 2 years is collapsed everything into a general capital activity. When John does the planning, and you'll see it before you, it's still broken out. It's still broken out by air quality and appliances and camera systems. There are still items that are listed, but the nice thing is it's all under one line item. So it creates a level of flexibility and use for you to really fund those activities and use those funds if any projects come up or something that you hadn't anticipated originally. And so what we've done below, and we will do when the 2021 capital fund budget is entered by the staff, is what we like to do is we have a list of all of your eligible projects. So you create a 5-year plan. And in order for you to use these funds, this activity needs to be in the 5-year plan. It doesn't have to be in the 2021 year. It can be in a later year, but it has to be in that 5-year plan. So what I've done before is we go through and we list out all of your eligible projects. And then we identify for the staff which 5-year plan that project is in. Because then that allows them, when they're programming these dollars, to identify the best use and which ones are eligible. And so an example of that importance would be if you're looking at the community center upgrade, or if you're looking at a hot water system replacement, or this, actually, we talked about this today. If you're looking at repairing the roof at West Haven, the only available grant to do that work is the 2018 grant. And so if you weren't mindful of this, if you didn't have it in a sheet like this before you, you could inadvertently use 2019 when really the funds are available for 2018. And so this helps the staff and gives them a broader picture of how all of these grants can really work together, because what you have is significant. You have a 1.5 million right now anticipated in hard cost dollars that are really for the improvements of your sites, for appliances, and for improving the quality of life for your residents and their units. Does anybody have any questions about capital fund? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So as that example, if the roof repair was in the 2018 grant and we did not use it, would we lose that money, or can it roll over?
You don't lose the money. It's just an eligible activity. And so all that means, what it means though, is if you did the roof and you didn't draw down 2018 dollars, you don't have the ability to use 2019 or 2020 dollars. So you would have to program that use into the 2021 grant. And so all of these things, because what you'll see, and we talk about this a lot, there's a vast number of eligible projects, because what you really want to do is create a plan that allows you the universe of projects that you want to tackle. And then as a staff and as a board, you make the plan for how you're best going to use those dollars. And sometimes you have, if you weren't doing the redevelopment effort at Crescent Halls, an example would be something like the elevator. The elevator is more significant than 1 year. So really what will happen is you will program that project in multiple years. That way you can put all the funding together.
So it's like a city CIP budget, where it's
I
funded over 5 years, probably.
It can be, yes. And so what happens is when you create your plan, it's a 5-year plan. And so basically you put everything out to the public about what you hope all your capital plans to be in those 5 years. And then what happens is when you get the 1-year grant, you take all those activities and then you decide which of those projects you're going to pull forward and use that specific year's funding for. But to your point, if you decide to not do something, if you say you chose, say you chose equipment purchases for 2018, but then you decided, you know what, we have enough money in later years and I really want to do that roof, you can move that project, you can move that equipment purchase to 2019 and use the 2018 money to do the roof. Okay. Are there any other questions about capital fund? Thank you. All right. So so that we've gone through total tenant revenue, we've reviewed how we describe our rental revenue from tenants. We've reviewed our subsidy revenue. So all of your subsidy revenues are received from HUD. We've reviewed your housing assistance payments, your admin fee earnings based on, vouchers leased, your operating grants, those are the operating subsidy dollars that we receive to offset and to kind of accompany the rents that you receive from the residents. And we've reviewed your capital grants. The next group is total fee revenue. These fees are specific to only the central office cost center. These fees are based on Charlottesville's participation in the asset-based management program that HUD has prescribed. We operate with a central office cost center. Traditionally, historically, you had a situation where you would potentially have executive directors that their salary and the costs related to them and the administrative staff were charged to all the programs. And so what HUD has prescribed instead when they transition to asset-based management is that sort of like a private management model where you have a regional asset group. You have a central office cost center that holds all of your administrative activities for the oversight and of the assets. And then individually, these properties pay management fees to offset the structure of the central office cost center. And so all this revenue is based off of how many units are leased at the housing sites and how many vouchers are leased in the Section 8 program. And so if we look at management fees, so this is a schedule that we keep year after year. It's similar to what we looked at before when we're trying to figure out how many units you have leased. But what this does is it also tells you what your fee earnings are for the central office cost center. Let me make this a little bit smaller. So actually, I can move my thing. All right. So what we have here is you earn a fee per every occupied unit for management fee. So right now, Charlottesville has a management fee rate of $75.63. What that means is that for every occupied unit at a property, the central office cost center by month receives $75.63. So if you are under leased, the central office cost center does not have as much money to operate. If you are where you're supposed to be or 100% leased, then they are receiving that full level of revenue and that full level of funding to offset the costs of those of the central office. Along with a management fee, the central office cost center also earns a bookkeeping fee. The bookkeeping fee is $7.50. Again, that's tied to your occupied units. The final fee that they can earn is an asset management fee. That is a straight $10 a month. It's based off of the total number of units. It's not about what's leased and what's not. It's just total straight units. But it can only be charged if that property has enough net income to support it. If the property is not operating with a net income, you're not allowed to charge the $10 per unit month. And so sometimes when you're looking at the budgets and when you've seen year-end reports, you'll see what are called inter-amp transfers. And why we're making those adjustments is because you need each individual amp by itself. So West Haven is its own amp. Crescent Halls is its own amp. South First and 6th Street together are its own amp. And then the scattered sites are its own amp. You need those individual amps to be operating in order to charge that asset management fee for revenue for the central office cost center. If one or the other doesn't have enough income, what we can do is transfer funds from AMP 1 to AMP 2, from 4 to 3, to help them offset so that we continue to have those earnings at the central office cost center. Along with those 3 from the public housing, we also earn a 20% management fee from the admin earnings at Section 8. And so it's instrumental when you have those leased units, the leased vouchers, you'll see, you can look right here. So in April, you had 329 leased units, you got roughly $21,000. Now that you have 385, we should be getting roughly almost $25,000 in admin earnings to help offset the administration of that program. The central office cost center is allowed to earn 20% of that. And so for, again, every voucher not leased, we're losing, and it compounds every single month what you're not earning. The Section 8 program is also charged a $7.50 per voucher leased bookkeeping fee. And really those bookkeeping fees are meant to offset the cost of the accounting staff and those that are doing the work for those programs every day. So as those things are revenues to the central office cost center, later down the budget, you'll see they are expenses on the opposite side. And so you'll see below, you see here under the administrative section, management fees, bookkeeping fees, and asset management fees. So when you're looking at your column budgets, they will be listed as revenues for the central office cost center. They'll be listed as expenses for public housing and for Section 8 and for the capital fund program, where we charge the 10% management fee. The last item we're going to talk about here under revenues is with respect to other government grants and other revenues. So I have a list. This is an estimated list. It's not a final list, but it's a beginning. One of the conversations that we've had in the last 2 days are those funds that are available to Charlottesville that have not been previously available, that we need to be mindful of and how we're going to program. The first item on this list is public housing operating shortfall. So Charlottesville was identified earlier in the year as a housing authority that could enter shortfall. And so HUD identified a need of $658,547. And so in order to use those funds, there is a action plan that Charlottesville has to undertake. And I know that, John's already engaged in that effort. There are 3 grants that are available that make up the 658,000. And so based on the progress that Charlottesville is undertaking and that is being led, we anticipate that during the fiscal year 2022, that $268,980 will be available for use for operations. We will look further on how we're going to show that, which public housing property or which AMP that we will put that on, or if we'll just kind of, allocate it among the AMPs wherever the need is. But that's what we anticipate will be an additional revenue to CRHA. The next one is Public Housing CARES Act. So the total amount that you received in Public Housing CARES Act was $240,000. We anticipate that the majority of that will be expended before the beginning of fiscal year 2022. If there's any funding left over, obviously we will update this, and that will be on the public housing budgets. It's likely that it will probably be under West Haven if we're using it to help with the unit term process there, if we're continuing to do that. But obviously that will be programmed by the staff, but we will update that. You received two CARES Act grants for the Section 8 program. The first one was $53,300. Of that, I looked today, so through January, you have just over 50,000 left. You haven't used much of it. Honestly, you had the payroll protection program. And so that really shielded a lot of these salaried costs that maybe at the beginning of COVID would have been charged to CARES Act. So there were a lot of housing authorities, including the ones that I manage, that the first, beginning of COVID, when people weren't really coming into the office, they were working from home. Maybe they were, just on administrative leave while we were trying to figure it out. We charged a lot of those salaries to the CARES Act. Interestingly, you guys had PPP, which is amazing. And so you really do have more flexibility in how you use these CARES Act dollars. And so, like I said, you've got about 50,000 left in the first one. In the second CARES Act for Section 8, you've received $60,969. From conversations, I understood that you had anticipated using that for landlords incentives and things of that nature. Of that 60,000, you've spent about 8,700 in landlord incentives. And so between the two right now, you have just over $100,000. Obviously we've got, 2 more months in the year to go through, but there'll definitely be some funding from CARES Act for Section 8 that you'll be able to roll into the next fiscal year. You can't use it as equity, you have to defer it. And so we'll do that at year end, and then you'll be able to bring those dollars into 2022. HUD has allowed you until December 31st, 2021 to extend, expend all these dollars. And so it's really about, Melinda and John and programming these dollars and how they want to spend them. And so that'll be a greater conversation for you guys to have as we go through the budget process. The next one is C-SCRAP admin, which is, I find exciting because from what I've been told, you're going to receive 7.5% of the total grant. So the total grant for supporting, the Charlottesville residents through this program is $900,000. So 7.5% is $67,500, which is great. And what that really will do is you have currently one staff person that's identified as, she spends about 50% of her time only on that program. And so she'll continue to do that. And then it will legitimately offset office expenses and other things and benefits, things that we haven't really had previously. So that's great. The next one is CACF.
Can you give me the name for the acronym CSRAP? What's the acronym name?
The Charlottesville Supplemental Rental Assistance Program. It's an item that's in the City of Charlottesville 5-year CIP budget.
Thank you. And then while you're still there, can you tell them what CACF is?
CACF is the nonprofit in the area. They may already know.
Okay, good.
CACF.
I write things down quickly, and I realized I wrote CACF. And so when you just asked me what C-SCRAP meant, I went, oh Lord, hope I don't know what CACF means, but I do know the use. So it's identified currently as $67,250, and it's meant to support the redevelopment coordinator as we continue through that process. And the last item that we currently have as new revenues that we're looking to program is the eviction diversion program. It's roughly $91,000. And what that is meant to support is the staffing position as well as rental assistance as we kind of go through that process of eviction diversion and providing assistance to them and a way forward. And so, as I mentioned with the redevelopment coordinator, and I talked about earlier, something new that you'll see this year is another column, on this budget where we're going to be identifying redevelopment efforts, city funded efforts, so that we can start to put these things down in writing and be clear about where we anticipate seeing support from the city or other sources and how we anticipate spending them. And what that really will do will allow you to have a full picture of personnel. Because right now, when we create the salary and benefit schedule for the board and for stakeholders that you receive in the packet, we have every staff person identified. Everybody that's on the payroll for CRHA is there. But those individuals that are charged to a redevelopment, that are charged to the city for the C-SCRAP program, we weren't showing an operating budget for them. And so it was almost like their salary, as much as we were covering it and it was anticipated and we had shown it, we weren't looking at the full picture of where the source of funds were coming for those individuals. And so it will be nice now if we show those, because it will really, you'll be able to tie those dollars out completely to the staff that's managing all these different activities.
Can you tell me, is the eviction diversion program federal funded? What is the funding the source for that?
So that was just approved last night at the city council meeting. It's funded through the CDBG CV3 funds. So right now it's funded for at least a year. Our goal is to continue funding it longer. And we are working with the city to see about another opportunity for funding to extend it. So maybe we're not using the remainder of the fund for the eviction portion. we'll be getting additional funds for that possibly. But right now it's funded for a year and we're going to look to fund it for longer.
Great. Okay. So that's the full review right now of all the revenues that we're seeing come into CRHA. And so from there, what we can review, and we'll just kind of go through some of it, is the process that we take from there is we really spend our efforts with respect to expenses. Again, it's an interesting year. I know that everyone says this over and over again, but it is true. It's an interesting year because of COVID. Traditionally, housing authorities in their budgeting process would have the ability to look at some of their previous activities to identify vendors and people that you've used. But interestingly, because of COVID and because so much of your fiscal year was spent underneath COVID, it's really difficult to even look at that information. So nice with new staff, we're really taking kind of a hands-on approach at looking at all these expenses. And so the first group of expenses are your just basic operating admin expenses. Your administrative salaries will come to you in a schedule along with the maintenance salaries. We identify them, staff by staff. We've had some dialoguing and conversations about what that will look like this year, what vacant positions might be advertised, maybe filled by April. But obviously we're anticipating, having a certain amount of maintenance staff with respect to, the maintenance work order crew and the unit turn crew. It's been nice for me to see the focus that the maintenance staff has undertaken with respect to the activities, because it gives us a better sense of what these individuals are doing rather than just, taking our maintenance staff and charging them out. We're able to identify what the use of these individuals are, and then we're likely going to really charge them to those properties that are using that staff. Because some of these staff are different dollar value because they have different skill sets. And so if we're trying to have an asset management approach where we're understanding what it takes to operate these individual amps, it's important that we charge the individuals that are actually going to be doing the work at those properties. And that's specific with respect to unit turns. If we have unit turns that we're still working through and the staff are identified as doing that, we want to be charging them that way. And so we're spending time now with the maintenance staff, maintenance leadership, and understanding who he currently has on, what they're looking to hire, and where he sees them starting the year in April. And so the board will be provided, in February with a draft schedule for final submission in March of administrative salaries, maintenance salaries, and benefits as well. The rest of the operating administrative categories are very traditional. It's auditing fees. You have a company under contract for an annual audit, and so you pay that cost every year. Your management fees, we've already gone over with bookkeeping. Employee benefits, that will be part of your schedule that we provide for salaried individuals. And then general office expenses. Legal will be something that we spend some time on. The past 2 years, legal has been significant and has kind of changed. And so we'll definitely spend some time with the central office staff to understand, because I think that's, if we're moving toward eviction prevention, obviously, then those charges will be different at the public housing properties. But with all your redevelopment efforts and all the other level of assistance, that charge is a little bit different in the coming year likely. And so we will have that dialogue with the central office staff to understand what they anticipate their legal expense with Ms. Carnes, Delphine Carnes, will be. Travel, no one's going anywhere. So I don't anticipate that will be high. And then other is a lump sum line item. I know that last year we gave you a schedule to break it out. Other traditionally includes consulting fees, like a company like ours, or if you have other consultants that come in that help out with different efforts. It includes staff training, which can be remote. If you're doing a Nan McKay, if you're online for some kind of maintenance training, that would all get charged there. Banking fees, all that kind of miscellaneous stuff tends to find its way into that category. And so we try, because it is a roll-up category, we try as best we can to give you some sense of detail, because sometimes that number can be a little hefty when we provide it, because it is a roll-up category. And so when we provide the draft to you, we'll try to break that out. One thing that we've done with the staff and I actually haven't emailed it yet, but I've shared it with Mary Lou Hoffman, is we did do a review of all your vendors paid, just to give people a sense of the universe of who you're using to do all these activities. Because for me, based on your prior experience with HUD, it's really important to make sure that any of these vendors have contracts, have purchase orders, and anyone who doesn't, we need to get one before you start the next fiscal year and have a sense of what are we doing. And so Mary Lou, I had sent her the list, and she's going to, start going through some of these invoices and have a sense of, well, what are we paying this company for? What do they charge us? Is it an hourly rate? Is it per visit? What is it? And that will help the conversation with Melinda Height and with Brano to really kind of work through what you anticipate some of these costs to be. I also reached out today with Portsmouth, who is assisting you in the procurement effort, and she provided me with a contract register, which is great. And so we'll use that as well to really identify how we're going to budget some of these line items for the next year. Total tenant services. Tenant services other is the amount that gets sent to FAR for their efforts in managing this for CRHA. It's $25 per unit month, per unit, sorry, move here all day. But so that number it's the same number every year, and we send that off to them, and it's reimbursed by HUD through our operating subsidy. And so it's actually not a negative impact at all to the budget. HUD supports it. The next category is total utilities. So what I tend to do with this, and I'll do it with the staff, is we do kind of a year-over-year review. We try to see where things are trending. It's interesting with COVID, more people are home. More people are home, your electric costs are up, your water costs are up. Some of those activities that maybe would take place at a workplace took place at home. Kids are doing school at home, way more electric. And so we'll take a look at that for kind of temper some of those costs last year if we're hoping to come out of this a little bit, and we'll do it estimated. And we just really do a trend analysis on utilities, and we try to make our best estimate, knowing the activities that we know, especially with people being home more. The next category is maintenance. We've already described your maintenance labor. And again, that will be on a full schedule that you will receive of all your staff positions and any vacant positions that are available. Maintenance materials, those are all the materials that are purchased to support the work order process that your maintenance staff undertake. We're trying to work with the maintenance staff to utilize the Yardi work order system. And so we're hoping, that in the next year, that process will kind of grow and continue, and there'll be a better understanding from the maintenance staff on how to manage that. And we'll be able to track what the materials are that are being purchased and actually used in the specific work orders, which would be great. But that will be an effort that we work on, probably in the first 6 months of the fiscal year. The next group are all of your maintenance contracts. So these are all your vendors, and this will kind of dovetail off of the contract register that I received from Portsmouth. And then we'll have to supplement that with any vendors that we've identified need contracts. So it's your garbage and trash, which you have, with time disposal. You've got heating and cooling, elevator maintenance, any unit turns, but primarily your unit turns have been, they've either been using capital fund. So some of them might come through operations depending on where the funding's coming in. Electrical, plumbing. So those are all your skill trades that you would require kind of permitting. And so you'd have someone come in to take those items and do that work. Extermination, obviously, we've always had those conversations about, the Interstate Pest Control Company, and then, you utilizing the bed bug machine and how that may alleviate some of the interstate pest control costs. Routine maintenance, if someone comes in to do painting, cleaning, things like that, if you use it. And then miscellaneous. And so this is really the area that contract register, kind of looking also at protective services, will really come into play. I think that a lot of those contracts are listed here. And again, like I said, anything that is a vendor that you've used, we'll make sure that it gets into it and gets a contract, or at least some type of PO with quotes for the next year. Some of this will be interesting. Again, Charlottesville is really going to evolve in the next year or two with respect to budgeting and operations and how you manage this. So if you're talking about elevators, you're talking about Crescent Halls, And when you go through that effort, you know, some of those costs will start to fall away and you'll have different costs. But the hope is that, you know, you'll be able to get away from some of those. And then employee benefit, again, that will be on the schedule, and identify the staff on that schedule. When you see them, they're identified as administrative, tenant service, administrative, or maintenance, and you'll see that. One more, and then I'll stop and ask for any questions. So protective services, again, right under maintenance, you have your protective services contract, and I have seen it on the register. And so we will review that to make sure that there is sufficient availability for the next year. If there's not, if it has to be, you know, reviewed, we will do that, and make sure that each property that's receiving their services, it's budgeted accordingly. So I just went through a lot. Does anybody have any questions? We've got protective services, maintenance, utilities. Any questions? No? Okay, we're winding up. So insurance premiums, you basically have one provider, which makes it easy to go through and review. But you have one state provider of all your utilities, all of your insurance premiums, your property, your liability, workers' comp. We'll have to take a look at workers' comp. I don't know specifically how many, you know, claims you've had. It's usually a rolling 3-year average. They take a look at that and kind of estimate. We tend to use a percentage of your salaries to come up with what we anticipate your workers' comp cost will be. But, you know, some of those we'll take a look and see kind of, that's one of the few costs that can change during the year because they'll come out and do a payroll audit. And so we'll take a look and see what your, you know, last couple of years have been, because you know, Charlottesville from a staffing perspective, you know, shrunk and then you're growing again. And so there's some flexibility there in that workers' comp cost that we might want to key into. And so we'll take a look at that. Other general expenses, this line item tends to just be under the Section 8 program. It tends to hold your, if you have a port program, which I don't believe you have anybody participating in a portability where they would be, you know, using a Charlottesville voucher somewhere else. This is where you would charge your administrative fee that you have to pay the other housing authorities. It's also right now where we're holding any of your landlord incentive payments. And so if we anticipate that you're going to continue that program into the new fiscal year, that's what we would budget here. We would show your landlord incentives there. And that's something that, like I said, the staff is working on. Compensated absences. It's interesting because you have, like I said, with new staff, that changes comp absences because that's the value of the time earned by your staff. So your vacation, your sick, and your schedule is really based on years of service. And so with more new people, the value of your compensated absences that you have to have on your books, it goes down, you know, because those individuals have earned less time so far. And so that'll be something that we have to review this year. Payments in lieu of taxes, that's your pilot payment that you pay to the city of Charlottesville. It is a equation basically of, you know, you take a look at all of your rental revenue and then you back out all of your utility costs and then you charge 10%. And that's your payment in lieu of taxes. I would have to look specifically, some different towns and cities will allow you to back out your garbage and trash because you pay for that rather than having the city provide that to you. And so basically you would determine what your 10% was after you pay your utilities, and then you could back out the cost of your garbage and trash. And so we'll take a look at that. We make that payment annually. HUD supports it. It's in your operating subsidy submission. So it's really a dollar in, dollar out. It's no negative impact to the operating of the amps. Bad debt. This is your annual write-off. So I know that there have been considerable efforts this year in resources to support the residents in past due debt for rent. And so I know that's something that John has continued to work on and will continue to do toward the end of the year. And so we're hoping that moving forward to next year, you know, we'll have to determine, you know, where we're seeing the dollar values at each amp that's uncollected and anticipate what we think will be reasonable, because that does negatively impact your operations. And so we budget for what we think is reasonable. And then every year in March, you know, the staff come forward to you to review and approve the write-off. And so that's really where that line is carried. Below the line, so those are all your operating expenses. Below the line is your HAP, and we talked about that. That's really just that's a dollar for dollar. So, you know, what you spend in HAP, HUD will support so long as you don't exceed your budget authority. And so that's really, once we create, and I'll show you, once we have that trend analysis that we went through, you know, this provides what the total subsidies were every month. And so we will determine your average HAP, and then we'll estimate how many units per month we anticipate you having leased, and that's what we'll budget for your HAP expenses for your landlords. Below the line, you have what we talked about earlier, your inter-AMP transfers. So when one AMP is sharing money to the other to help support it, that will be shown there in your other financing sources. And then finally, expected capital payments. So basically, when you do that capital fund review and they create the plan and they determine, you know, any uses of those capital funds to support, it would be shown there, that we would show that level of activity that's going to happen at the individual AMPs during the year. So that is a soup to nuts review of the budget, and some more specifics about the individual budget process, the individual line items, and really the work. Try to give you an overview of the work that the staff's going to be undertaking really in the next month to get to a spot to give you a comparable draft for your consideration and for review and questioning, that then will give them the opportunity to take a couple more weeks to go back and really kind of get through maybe some more specific things to provide you, you know, the best guess of where they think they're going to be next year. I'm happy to take any questions. No.
Questions? It's a lot.
It's a lot, I know.
And
That's why we try to do it like this. That way there's this review. That way, when they come back to you in February, you've at least seen it, you've heard it, you know, you've kind of felt it a little bit, so that you have an easier time asking questions, because it's not the first time you've even heard some of these phrases, you know, and you're wondering, where'd you get that number from? We try in this review to go through some of that with you, so that when you're seeing it, you know, fully scoped out, you have at least, you know, kind of a look of it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's great. It just, from what I heard, it sounds like we're in better shape given our occupancy and vouchers out
Yes.
being used.
Yes.
You know, it's always hard to figure out where the wiggle room is if we hear back from people. I guess it's probably more in the capital projects where they'd like to see the money go.
Prioritization of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's going to be interesting too, because I think that the effort that Charlottesville has undertaken historically and constantly is these unit turns, right? We've got to get the units turned. We got to get the units turned, right? And so I know that John's undertaken that effort. I think he's leased up, you know, on the public housing side, a significant number of units, and then he's continuing to do that. And I think you got Charlottesville in the year got a little bit turned because you had transfers, right? So you had people that were in the public housing program that transferred out into the Section 8 program. So the Section 8 program was propped up and you were able to start leasing up, but then you did get some vacancies that potentially we hadn't anticipated. But again, those are new vacancies, and so it's being managed. And, you know, they obviously feel confident and feel like they're going to be in a good spot come April, that, you know, they'll have, you know, 10, 12 vacant units, which, you know, isn't unmanageable in the next couple of months after that.
Haley, I'll ask you, I guess for the commissioners and the folks that, you know, are responsible for reviewing this, and given your position as to, you know, having been in that role or in that role, you know, what do you really want them to pay attention to, or what do you expect them to see or look for? Like, what's going to really help them, you know, like they don't want to know how many reams of paper we're buying, but maybe they need to know more direction in some other areas.
So I think that, and that's a little bit of why we go through, because again, we go through certain things in this review that I do think that are important for the board to key into. So I do think understanding what your average tenant is paying in rent is important, because what that tells you is what the income of your residents are. and really maybe looking at a comparison. Maybe once we get to the point where we have a positive, a good budget draft, we could even start, comparing it and say, okay, at this time last year, this was the average income. This is where they're currently, this is where we're seeing them currently. Maybe even in the last quarter, are we starting to see a bump up? Are we hoping to see that, in the next quarter, next year? I think from my perspective, an interesting review now that someone in your position is here would be to really spend time during the fiscal year doing quarterly reviews and saying, I think that, as much as we provide the monthly financial statements, doing more of a review on where we are currently, especially with the leased units, with the tenants' income, with what we're paying our landlords, what's going on in our community. I think all of those things really kind of key into what's happening around you when you're looking at what your, average HAP is, what your average rental payments are, because the operating subsidies, there's little control over that, right? There's little that we can do. Some of these things are just dollars that we get from HUD, and we can try our best to estimate them, but we don't have control over them per se. But with respect to what goes on in our community and what's going on and what's impacting your residents, knowing what's happening in maintenance, knowing what dollars we're spending, especially once you get away from the unit turns and you can actually spend more time focusing on the projects. Like, there are so many projects out there that are impacting the quality of life of your residents with respect to capital fund, and identifying and prioritizing, and in new appliances, COVID, air quality improvements, mold remediation, things like that really impact the residents. And so when you're talking about what's important to key in on, it's always going to be maintenance. It's always going to be capital projects and the prioritization of them. And then really looking at our resident population, because, and where they are and what's impacting them with respect to their incomes and with their rents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, while you have this on the screen,
Sure.
I'm going to ask the novice question, and I'm not sure if you mentioned it because I was definitely paying attention during this, but
Sure.
Is Crescent Halls not on there because of the redevelopment?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that Charlottesville has, I brought this up yesterday too, has spoken about in the last couple of years, which I always think is important, is the parallel track. And so for anyone who, I'm sure everyone that's on this call has heard it, but the parallel track is meant to be, as you're undertaking the redevelopment effort at Crescent Halls and as you're undertaking the redevelopment effort at South First, we cannot let those other properties fall to the wayside. And so the parallel track was always meant to say, if we're going to have these other sources and uses for funds to redevelop, let's take our capital funds and then start to really identify the needs of the other properties that we can't get to yet. And so then we did this review last year, and I created this document the last year. That's why I didn't, to your point, I didn't even include Crescent Halls. Obviously, if there was some emergent need that had happened in the year, and I should make that point because we made that point last year, so I appreciate you asking the question. Obviously, residents need to know if there is an emergent need that happens before redevelopment completely takes hold, these capital funds are available to support Crescent Halls and any emergencies that take place. But with respect to budgeting and programming, we don't look at it. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's
Thank
important to share. Thanks for asking that question. Yeah.
I have a question. But this is kind of down in the weeds, I think, at this moment. But when the capital planning is put into these 5-year plans, I'm looking at camera system upgrades or things related to safety.
Yep.
So should we be starting to think about that to put in well, depending on what the communities want, we can start for 2021, maybe starting to see, or, I'm not seeing a lot in that category, but we could.
Yeah. So
to add.
Historically, you've only budgeted for it or programmed for it at West Haven. And so, and again, it's year over year. Every year, it's in the 5-year budget every year for West Haven for camera system upgrades.
And probably Crescent Halls, which is no longer.
It probably was, yeah.
Here.
But to your point, that's the other nice thing about this type of review is it lets you very quickly and easily see where you aren't programming.
Yeah.
And so you're, like you said, you're not programming, and again, community center upgrades AMP4 with the scattered sites, they're not going to have that. But with camera systems, maybe these individual homes would want something, and so whether it's some type of, system that they could have out there. And so like it does allow you to kind of see quickly and efficiently when you're doing your 2021, other than new projects that maybe aren't even on here, where do you need to backfill because you don't have funds available? Because the other thing is you've cleared out your 2017. Some of these activities might have been on that 2017 plan. And so you weren't so worried about them. But now that projects are falling off, if you need to put them back on, if they're still a priority, the staff will have to make sure they're on there. And this will hopefully help facilitate kind of calling that out.
And I have one more question before.
Sure.
I didn't want to, everyone else should speak up. What was I just saying? Oh, so while we're in transition, which I know is like just another layer with redevelopment,
right.
One community center is going to be used for offices. We have the Levy Avenue property that's going to be used for maintenance building. Will those show up as will those show up in the budget, or are we just sort of keeping that to the side because it's only temporary?
Sure. So what will happen, and I appreciate you bringing that up because I did talk to John about that today and I failed to make a note. So with respect to the community center, what we are looking at and considering, because I know that Section 8 is over there and some of the staff are over there, we are considering charging rent, and that would be revenue to the AMP. I think it's 6th Street Community Center. So that would be revenue to the AMP from the Section 8 program. And that would be an eligible use of the CARES Act dollars because you needed to expand that space for the staff to have the availability to have social distancing. And so that's something we're considering. And then with respect to the maintenance garage that's at Avon Levy, it's the same. We're considering making improvements or charging rent. And so those are things that are out there for us. And likely what it would do is it would show as, it would be between the programs. And so it would show up as a revenue or as an expense. Yep. Because the 6th Street Community Center is owned by that AMP. And then the only issue, and we did talk about this a little bit yesterday, is that garage, the ownership of it. So then where would that rent sit? It might show up as an expense to maybe multiple AMPs, but we're working through that.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Any other thoughts? I like that this is taped this year. It's funny because we had a conversation last year when I finished, because last year when I came out, I did this presentation 3 or 4 times. I met with Legal Aid and FAR, and it was really great. And it got really good toward the end of it. And so, because we had done it so many times, and Kathleen had said, oh, I wish we taped it. But last February, we didn't do, the Zoom the way we do it now. So this will be great that it's taped because again, anyone who doesn't get to participate today, anyone that doesn't get to see it can certainly key into it. And I'm happy, for you guys to shoot any emails to John or to Mary Lou and forward them along. I'm happy to provide, whatever clarifications I can.
I just wanted to ask, you anticipate the categories to pretty much stay the same, but the revenue streams to perhaps move around?
Sure. Yes. Yeah. So what we do, and the reason I show it to you like this is because this is the format that HUD requires for you to submit your annual financial statements. This is the exact line item. So every year when your books are closed and we create financial statements and we have to upload them to HUD, this is the format. And so when we create the budget, we try to do it in the same way because our goal here is to provide ease of view. Because if you keep kind of seeing these things in the same formatting, it becomes far easier for you to focus on the things that you find important and not be looking for something. And so this template will remain the same. Like I said, we likely will have 1 or 2 more columns that will be separate programs, which would be redevelopment and the city. And the city funded activities, sorry.
Other questions? in the timeline for when the community meetings happen, how many numbers will be plugged in? Or I don't know, I always feel like it's a hard discussion because it's so hard to well, for people who are not in the financial world every day to digest everything. So I guess this isn't really a question, maybe a comment. It's like when we go to the community meetings, it's great to have a cover page or something that's like, hey, here's generally what we
Bullet.
see and what are the priorities,
Yes.
rather than
All of it.
you know, sheets of numbers, which are
Yes.
harder to sort through.
Yeah, so depending on the dates of your meetings, what we can do is provide a summary page for individual properties that will also give people the full breadth and picture, but at the same time for that individual AMP, potentially if you're having a meeting at West Haven, if you're having a meeting at 6th Street, they should still see what's happening at the other AMPs, but it will also kind of key into theirs specifically. And we can really provide bulleted kind of information to let them know how much money we're spending on maintenance, how much money we intend to program for capital improvements. We can definitely do that so that we're providing the same level of information, but we're just presenting it differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be awesome. I'm just trying to, how do we get the best feedback? and
Absolutely.
where people want to put money.
Yeah. And I think too, and I'll talk to John about this from, the safety meetings that you have or any other of these community, the subcommittees that you have. If there, obviously security is always an issue, right? And so we would want to make sure that that's front and center as a bulleted item so people see what you're anticipating spending there and investing. But it's also if there's anything else that he or the staff can let us know about to make sure from a presentation standpoint that he has, kind of spelled out for people more specifically. Because to your point, I get like no one needs all of this, but they want to know. And so it's interesting to give them the full breadth, but then maybe give them more specifics about the things that are most important and the things that the staff are hearing the most about. To show the level of, that the staff has heard them and that they're really trying to translate that in the budget this year.
Haley, would that be presented year over year? Like, is there a comparison? So like the security is a great example of what we have to budget versus what we've spent. It's a huge difference.
Right. Yeah, you could do that. Yeah. I think that what we do is if we identify the areas of interest, and then you kind of say, you could present it in such to say, this is what we anticipate spending the next year. And this is what we've been investing year over year. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds like.
All right. Is everyone kind of settled with that right now? I just took that in and
yeah.
So for the board, I'm just thinking for us, it would be great when we get the dates for the community meetings, maybe we can divvy up and I'll sit in on different communities to hear some feedback. So we also have some more perspective before we get the draft and then vote on it, so we can hear from residents directly.
Yeah. John, have those meetings been scheduled?
Yes. Some of them have. We have our first meeting is going to be on February the 10th.
Okay.
One's at 4 and one's at 6 p.m., 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. And then we have the board work session, which will be on the CFP budget on February the 11th at 5 p.m. We're hoping for a board approval on March the 9th. So the staff is going to work on getting a draft CFP budget next week completed. And it's really going to look at what it's already been budgeted in prior years that has not been completed, with the large focus on safety and security measures to not only include cameras, but environmental friendly changes on the site that would induce safety.
Oh,
great.
Thank you. Okay. And I guess as soon as you have those dates, send them out to the board, just so we can get them on the calendar.
I think Kathleen shared it earlier.
Oh, she
It
did.
looks like-
didn't she?
Looks
Yes,
like
she
she's
did.
she's sharing it again on the screen.
Thank you. Sorry. I had a lot of Zoom calls today. All right. Well, that's awesome. Thank you. And I wish, hopefully there's a way to, I like that you can call in, or, hopefully if any residents even just write in, we could take feedback in other ways if someone's having trouble connecting with the technology, because I know that might be an issue for some people, but it just adds another, level of the possibility that we wouldn't hear the feedback we'd like to hear.
We're
all right.
always open to receiving comments through our email address, which is comments@cvillrha.com.
Great, thank you. And we still have offices, paper copies of comments are welcome too, I would assume at the central office. Yeah, go ahead.
We had sent a copy of this to the RAB today for a save the date, so everyone can get it on their calendar. And we're also, our goal is really to get it posted by next week, so then we can start the community engagement part with the draft, having a working draft in place.
Great, thank you. I did see it. I just don't know if I had time to open the sorry, I did see you had that out. So we had a closed session plan, but we're going to do that on Monday after our board meeting. So I believe if there's no more questions on the budget at the moment, I know there's going to be a lot more. We could take public comment if anyone is on the line that would like to comment on this or other issues going on. I don't think we have a lot on the line, but if anyone would like to, please, I think you have to put your hand up, and then they can unmute you. Not they, Brian Wheeler specifically.
That's right. If you're in the audience, you can click the raise hand icon in the Zoom webinar. If you're on via telephone, you can press *9. Right. We do have a telephone participant with a question. And do you want to give them 3 minutes?
Yeah, 3 minutes. And honestly, we've been kind of flexible in our work sessions, especially if there's it looks like only 3 attendees on the line. Right. So we'll see. Yeah.
So caller, you're on with the board. And if you could identify yourself. And you'll have to unmute your microphone.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Collins. I work for FAR, the Public Housing Association of Residents. Almost missed this meeting, glad I hopped on. Don't really have much to comment except to say that I think we learn more and more each year when the budget time comes around, and we're paying attention, and we have great faith in the staff right now, and we know that you all have a desire to have expanded resident involvement in the creation of this budget and the capital budget, so we're able to do what we can to try to ramp that up for you, and that's about it. So thank you.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, we do have another hand raised. Don Gathers, you're on with the board. You've got 3 minutes.
And good evening, everyone. And again, I too don't have a lot, but just want to offer up a huge thank you for all of the work that you all are putting in to these efforts, especially to the budget efforts specifically. I really think that you all have us going in the right direction. I'm sorry, Don Gathers, I work for FAR, Public Housing Association of Residents. So once again, just thank you all for the efforts that you're putting forth.
Madam Chair, I don't see any other hands.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining the meeting. And I realized, Miss Mary Lou, would you like to introduce yourself? Because I haven't actually seen your face. And I know others, might would like to hear from you.
Sure. Mary Lou Hoffman, I am new to the Charlottesville area and obviously new to CRHA. Been here about a month now. It's been an interesting transition to say the least. There's definitely a lot of work to do. We won't be bored. I can guarantee that. But, there's a lot of opportunities here too, obviously, in this position and working with John and Haley it's the first time I've actually had a chance to meet her and Bob. So yeah, I'm trying to get a handle on things, and there's a lot of stuff that we're looking at and talking about. And I think it's short order before we kind of stop talking and start doing. So I'm really looking forward to kind of moving things along. I feel like we've gotten a great introduction in this first month, and there's a lot to learn for me personally, but I also come with a lot of background in companies of this size and management and internal processes and things like that we're in a lot of need of, which will help everyone else be able to do their job a little bit more smoothly, a little bit more accountable for things. So yeah, it's moving along.
All right. Well, we're very happy to have you join.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks. Okay. Any other comments from any other announcements, comments, questions before we adjourn? All right. I think we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I
My
second.
apologies.
Okay. And a roll call vote. Does anyone? I mean, I can do it. We have to do a roll call vote to adjourn because we're on Zoom and not in person.
Commissioner Goldblatt,
Yes, yes to adjourning.
Commissioner Dr. Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Aye.
Commissioner Slaughter, Chair Rucker.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's everybody.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Good night.
Bye.
Bye. Take
Stay
care.
warm. Bye.
Bye.